Hey guys, in this video I go through and apply the inking concepts I talked about in the previous video by inking a Hulk commission. This demonstration was shot at a workshop I host called Pro Bootcamp, where me and 3 other comic artists lecture, demo, and critique for 3 days straight. This is as close to how I actually work. I tried not to take too much out from the original footage. If you want to learn from me, check that out. I also have a course on proco.com where I teach concepts I use to draw. In it, I go through the fundamentals of drawing, primitive shapes to my strategy for drawing people to rendering and building form. Right now, Proco has a Black Friday sale going for 20% off. Use the code BLACK20 at checkout. Thanks and enjoy the video.
So what I do is I just pick a spot that I want to attack, and then I attack it. You can start anywhere. I could start on his hands, I could start in his background, I can start over in his eyeball, start on whatever. But I'm looking at this piece, when I'm studying it, I'm seeing all this debris that's floating around in the middle, in front of it. So I'm going to attack that first, because I would prefer to ink the debris and then ink the stuff behind it. So that's how I'm going to think about it, okay? Now, you can do something like this too, like I'm going to do it in a pen because the pen moves a little bit faster. Like, you can ink this line here. You see how I'm trying to control it? I'm controlling my wrist, okay? And there's a piece of debris that's hanging here. I can just go right through it, just like that. I can ink this piece just like that, and then I can come back later. Where's my white ink? I can come back later with some white ink and just kind of white out that line that's in the middle. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm inking. See, bam, and it's like instant white, and it doesn't take long. It'll dry in a couple seconds. So I can reverse it like that, okay? Or I'm just gonna go through and just quickly ink all the debris that I'm seeing here. So I'm just gonna quickly do that right now. And then I'm gonna layer it. Now, sometimes what I'll do, right, this is another trick I'll do. Let's say I have, I'll do this in red over here. Let's say I have a piece that looks like this, and I'm trying to ink it. What I'll do is this: instead of just inking go 1-to-1 and just inking it like that, I want to add some flavor to it. So what I'll do is this: I'll take like that same shape that's there, and I'm going to improvise a little. So I'll probably play around with it like that. See, I change the line a little bit, and I'll maybe double up a little bit like this on the bottom line, and then I'll push it here, maybe curve it out a little bit, and then I'll probably close it out over here, something like that. So as you can see, this is just simple, and then just want to add a little bit more style to it. So this is what inking does. Inking is, it's not just, I'm just tracing the line. Just tracing the line is one thing, like this. This is literally just tracing here. This is inking with style. You're adding a little bit more flavor, a little bit more, you're beefing it up. If you have a line here, instead of you're just inking one time, you might want to double up on it like that and create a tiny little pockets, little areas. Just let the line dance. Another thing I learned too, I learned this one specifically from Scott Williams. He was showing me when he was inking Wildcats, he started to transition some of his line work, and he started to show me this. Is literally that. It's like he would have like an eyeball like this, right? He would have an eye like that, and he would come in to ink it, and he would say, hey, instead of I'm just drawing one line like that, he would double up on it. He would kind of throw that and then double again. He would throw that and then draw another one. Maybe he'll triple up on it. And he creates like this kind of staggered type of look. It kind of opens up the line a little bit. So the line, instead of it's solid, now the line's breathing a little bit like that. So now it just turns, it makes it a little bit more lighter versus having this solid line that goes around like that and just kind of makes it look like it's locked and a little bit too thick and stuff like that. So he'll break it up, thin it down, and makes it look, actually looks great. And I still use it to this day. And it's something I learned like 20 years ago. Same thing, it's this tool. In the computer, There are certain brushes that you use that are exactly like this pen, that you can mimic the same strokes. And some are even better than this because it's a computer. So every time you go down stroke, you get the same thing over and over. And so it's perfect is what I'm looking for. But that might not be what I'm looking for. I might need a little bit more flexibility. So I'll switch to a different brush. I use Clip Studio. I have a range of brushes that I use all the time. And there's some new ones I just got from Proco, which just made my workload even better. Like, man, it makes it even easier for me. So it really depends. So you're constantly changing. Just like how you're changing your pens, I'm changing my brushes the same way as I'm inking. So it's constant that. So I can do either one. I don't have it doesn't matter. The thing is that to understand what you're doing, and then if you understand that it's thinner in the background, thicker in the foreground, you can start either way. You can start in the foreground and do them thick and then thin as you go, or you can start thin and then thicken it as you go. You can do that. The only thing I try to stick with is that first thing I mentioned, which was the light at the top. So the lines at the top, the lines closer to the light is going to be thin. The one further away from the light is going to be thick. So you'll see me do it a couple times in here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now that's just the finesse part about it. Okay, that's how I like. That's the rule that I learned, and I try to stick with it. But it's not an absolute rule. It doesn't mean like not 100% of the things you do needs to be locked into this. You can modify it and change things around. Okay, so yeah, you can play around with it. All right, so I'm going to attack like all this debris here. I'm going to throw some double lines from time to time, and I'm just going to keep going till I'm done, and then I should have a finished piece pretty fast. I said I was going to demonstrate the quill. I'm going to show you guys some how I'm doing this. Okay. It wouldn't hurt, but I'm only going to use this for now. I'll need it when I'm using my brush, definitely. Watch this. I'm going to ink this over here. The reason why I'm going to ink on the left side first, because I'm right-handed, and if I ink on the right and and it's still wet and I actually touch it, I'm going to mess it up. So I'm going to ink over here. I'm thinking I'm going to start inking in this direction because I'm right-handed and I don't want to mess up the lines I just inked. That's why I went up because of that. If you're left-handed, you could do it in the opposite direction. But in fact, this is one of the cool things about doing a double page spread. You can fold your pages like this and just ink on that page. You can actually just disconnect. You can cut the pages off, disconnect it, and just ink that page and put this one on the side. And when you're ready, you can come back to that later. We're going to attack. Remember, inking is improvising, okay? You don't have to stick with one-to-one. You see a line, that doesn't mean, oh, I'm just gonna draw a line. You can think, I'm gonna draw the line as thick, thin, and then double up on that, and then throw a couple smaller lines right next to it, just to kind of break it up a little bit. So you're turning a solid line into a line with an edge. That's how you want to think about it. But you don't want to do it everywhere at the same time also, because there's certain things that you only want to draw once, and you're cool with it, and there's certain things you want to play around with it a little bit. So it's up to you to interpret that, to figure that part of it out. But you will learn this as you go. Because like I said, there's no absolute solid must-have rule in inking other than, how do you position your arm and, the technical things about this. Now you see, I just threw these lines out and it's still wet. It's gonna be wet in a couple more minutes. It's still gonna be wet. So I have to avoid this area and then move on to another area because I don't wanna mess it up. And I'm gonna wait for it to dry and then come back over, and then I'll just keep kind of jumping from spot to spot to spot. That's the process when you're using ink. like this, okay? Pens are a lot easier because you just literally go. So this is one of the beauties about inking with brushes, right? Watch this. I'm gonna try and see if I could do a thick, thin type of stroke for you guys. So you dip your brush in the brush pen, right? And when you put it down, it creates like a fat tip, and when you throw the line, it thins out like that. So you put it down, fat to thin, like that, okay? But when you do it faster, it looks smoother. It looks a lot cleaner. All right, watch this. Let me see if I can do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You practice, you play around with it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's actually fading. Get more ink on there. Trying to pivot my arms. There it is. Wow, it's shaky. Control. There it is. There it is. There it is. There it is. Yeah. Okay, that's the control I'm looking for. Okay. So something in that range. A lot of practice. You gotta keep attacking though. So I'll stitch it in groups, and then once I have everything, then I'll look at it, what's the next layer? And that next layer is typically me coming back and cleaning it up with some white and just, you know, fixing the certain areas that I need to. This is fine. It has a lid on there. Okay, so I'm looking at a lot of the structure here, and I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to attack this? So I know what my tool can do, so I'm going to use my tool to that advantage. I could just go ahead and make this a solid black, or I can play around with it, right? See how I'm playing around with this line? I can come around and throw a series of lines like this. It kind of, you carve it a little bit. So inking does require a little bit of carving. See how I'm not really like outlining. It's not just go. It's you have to interpret this. It's kind of fluid. Yeah. See how I'm changing that? Got it. And I'm making it breathe a little bit more now. Go through. Just make it breathe a little bit. Yeah. I'm looking at this piece right here. I'm like, okay, let me outline that. Then we'll go through and make that breathe a little bit more. I'm adding to it. This area here is going to be different. I'm going to come in and make this all solid black. So I'm doing stitching it as I'm going because I know what I'm doing, but you can do this, right? Just outline this entire thing like this, thick, thin, back to thick. It's gonna be black all in there anyway. So you can shape the line, shape that contour into what you want it to be.
So you could carve out the whole hand if you wanted to, but right now you're working more on like on granular level?
Yeah, I am trying to break it down as I'm going. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to feel it versus ink it. I'm not just gonna, I'm just gonna ink it. You know, I'm trying to feel it out as I'm going. So each area has like its own little slightly different stroke to it, but it's not to the point where it's so different. You know, it's just a little bit. I'm just tweaking just a little bit as I'm going. Tweaking a little bit as I'm going.
What's the fun part?
Is the adventure to it, the part that makes it, that like I just turned the scribble into something fancy. Like, where's the pencil? Give me a pencil. I'll just do it here in black, right? It's in this black area. Let's say this was, let's say I just kind of scribble something like this, right? And I'm like, okay. But now when I come to ink it, I'm like, how do I ink that? Find a way to make it cool. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm just gonna redo that same thing, but I'm going to actually play around with it a little bit, like this. Play around with it a little bit, come up with something cool to look at. You can outline it, you can bring this back, you can double up on it like this, triple up on it. You know, I'm just finding a way to turn that random into something cool to look at. That's just,
Double up is just right next to it. It's
yeah.
like thickening it.
All the double up does is like, it takes a solid line and turn it into a breathable line. That's all it is. Just creates a little gap. So,
Eye puts it together.
yeah, your eye puts all that together. Just make it breathe a little bit. That's what I do all the time. Okay, like I have. See, I went through this to create the debris up here first, and now I'm going to go through on top, and see how thin I'm going. Even though it's at the top, thicker at the bottom. In gutters, you want to go thicker too. Gutters meaning, boom, boom. This point right here, where the two areas connect, that's a gutter. Okay, and then it gets thinner at the top. Okay, like this one here, I want this to breathe, so I'm gonna go thin. I'm gonna double up on it, triple up on it, maybe 1, 2. Kind of throw it a little bit. Even on the contours, you can double up. See, I double up. I made that line breathable.
Now I know where I got. I lost track of the up. You know what's on top. When I spin the paper around, I was spinning it.
Yeah.
I just lost where was the light. You know.
Yeah.
Like where was the bottom? Like I was making it thick on the wrong.
See how I'm turning? I know I'm comfortable with throwing lines this way. I am not comfortable throwing lines this way. So I'm going to turn it to where I'm comfortable. I can do it like this. And then come back and add another piece back here like this. To create this, it's called crocodile teeth. Okay, you can do that, or you can outline this area here and then just attack it like this. instead of outlining an area and then come back and fill it in black, right? That's what I'm gonna do. Like I'm gonna do this area. I treat it like a painter. So I'm gonna just capture that area with one stroke, I guess, or a couple strokes like this. I'm beating it up. I'm not just, how you're doing it is very one-to-one. You're doing one shape. I'm doing same thing, except I'm not stagnant. This is very stagnant, it's just bleh. This has flavor to it, there's energy to it. So I'm beating it up, okay? So try not to, don't look at this area as it's an area, like it's, like, don't look at this area as though it's 1, 2, 3, 4. You're just outlining, that's not it. You're capturing this energy, so you're doing this, and this is why I like to do this. I like to just paint into it immediately, because that way you get to see, you get all your strokes, you kind of get it all at the same time, right then and there, and you're not waiting. It doesn't feel stitched, or it doesn't feel like you're creating these little pockets and then you're going to fill it in later. It's just, you're almost like painting it. Like that's the process.
How does that relate to when we do the drill for the shape and then hatch marks on that?
And the pencil technique I showed you is completely different. Completely different, okay? This here, I'm capturing a shape area, not this, like this area I just showed you right here. This is how I would do it. Just capture, need more paint, more ink. Capture this area, just immediately go straight in and just painted it. It's completely different from the other technique. So I'm just gonna paint it all in. That way, my eye is seeing immediately, oh, I need to, you see how I'm adding these extra tiny lines? Yeah. Adding these extra tiny lines immediately, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see where I need to add a little extra oomph into it.
So if like it's one square of the abdominal, like you're thinking about that abdominal and adjusting, is it looking like an abdominal or is it not kind of?
Sort of, I am thinking, okay, it doesn't look like an abdominal, I am thinking that, but at the same time, I'm also thinking hatching. I'm hatching it, okay? This little area here, this is fine. I'm just gonna keep that in there. But here, see these lines here? I'm not just gonna draw one line or just kind of cover it up. I'm gonna try to interpret this area. See, I'm throwing some tiny strokes in this area. You're interpreting that area like, oh, look, it's turning into something, so you kind of keep it.
So you're not going to come back later and do your major hatch marks, you do them all at the same time?
I do them all right there.
Okay.
Right there, like that.
So you're basically working from one small area outward?
Yes, I'm doing this as I'm going. Okay. That's just my strategy. I know some inkers that, like yours, I think that comes out stiff. Throw it like this, I'm coming in, I'm painting it. I'm painting the strokes versus carving it. I'm painting the strokes in. See how I'm adding, beefing it up a little bit? This is what I'm doing.
How's your experience been so far? You chose to pick one of your own?
Yeah. I think I've drawn the same video before. This one.
When you're doing it in clip, are you switching back? You use a tapered brush, tapered inker, I think, a lot?
What do you mean flip?
You can flip it to a different, bigger size brush.
Oh, it depends. What if it's a background? If it's detailed, no, I don't. I stay small. I try to stay small because I like it because it has a nice thin tip. Because I want that the capability to adjust, to go thick, thin as I'm going. So I'm thinning as I'm going. certain areas like this, like his face.
How do you get it to be a big brush in Clip Studio?
You increase his brush size.
Oh, you
Just increase the brush size. And that's it. See this area? I'm going to try to attack the jawline, right? So I have this. I'm going to contour. When it comes to stuff like this, certain structures, you want to contour it first and then go inside. And then certain times you just want to just paint it on like it. Because right now it's just a chest, so I'm just going to paint it on. But if it was a different thing, I would contour the entire thing first and then add to it. But right now I'm just here. So like you see how it's all dark in this area? So I'm still going to try to isolate the contours of the chest first, and then go in and add to it, like this. I'm going to add. I'm going to do a gradient on this one. I'm going to do some test strokes like this because I'm trying to warm up to it. Saw a bunch of you guys outlining the hair, okay? You guys went around and kind of outlined certain areas like this, and you kind of do, okay, that's one way of doing it, which is, it's okay if you do it, if you know what you're doing. The problem with that is that a lot of the lines are not, they're not grouped in a way where it's meant to be shown as a section. It's more of like an impression of a section, So if you stick with inking more as an impression, you're going to be like 90 to 98% closer to what it should look at the final stages. The reason why I say that, because once you outline it and then you fill it in black, it's going to look stiff. Hair needs to look like hair. You're not going to get this motion if you're outlining it and then fill it in. It's going to look like a rigid piece now. So if you're going to flow it. That's what you need to do. So think of your flowing, the hair is flowing. So flow with the hair. That's how you capture that more natural look versus a stiff shape that's going to come out. That's going to look like something. Okay. So I always approach it as a painter. Basically that, just like I'm painting the hair on versus inking it. Okay, that's how I do it, and that's how I do a lot of organic stuff. Like I'm probably gonna do that with some of the areas back here. I'm probably gonna do it on the edge of the metal, even though it's metal and it's rigid. I still want the rips and the torns to look like they're alive a little bit. So I'm gonna paint it versus carve it out. When you carve it out, it becomes stiff. So that's what I do, and that's how I'm changing things up. So you can watch how I'm doing the hair, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm using a pen when I'm doing this. I'll switch, and I'll do it with the brush, so you can see what I'm talking about. That's why I say you got to test your materials to see what works, what doesn't work. Because I've done it where I've put in blacks, and they come back with white, and it's not white enough. It's not thick enough. And it's watery, or the black starts to bleed into the white, and it's just like it's ruining it. This is another thing too. I mean, materials matter, because I see a lot of people that oh, if an artist use it, I'm going to use it, and I'm just going to be just as badass as them. It doesn't really necessarily, play out that way. It really depends on the individual, because everyone. These are nothing but tools, and we all learn to drive a car differently, although we all can drive a car. We all learn to walk differently or ride a bike differently, although we can all walk and ride a bike. It's just a different way of how do you get from point A to point B using the same tool. Always. So you can make it up whatever you want. What I'm doing is just doing an impression. What I'm going to do is this. I'm just gonna quickly throw some lines like this, and then I'm gonna come back with it with a white paintbrush, and I'm just gonna go across it with white like that. I'm gonna make it look better, but right now that's all it is. It's just a filler.
So, Ryan, for your spot blacks, which tool do you use, like, specifically? Do you use, like, a brush?
Yeah, brush, ink to knock out the blacks. Yep, I go straight in. I like I said before. I treat it like a painter.
Okay, that makes sense.
So like when I'm coming here with this, I'm spotting these blacks. I'm just gonna attack it like this.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I'm trying to wonder how to like do it consistently. So.
Yeah, also like this. I'm just gonna attack it and just try to make it look cool.
Okay.
Just enough to break the shape, right? And again, you have some of those white lines, some of those white lines can kind of be going down, pointing towards right, right? If you're gonna have
Yeah. Like everything is just a temporary impression. Even the contours. I'm just putting it down so I can put something in, and then as I'm inking, I'm going to interpret that. So it can change, and it can change again. It can, because it really depends on the inker. Depends on like. When I pencil, I just drew a line, but when I inked it, I made it thin, thick, thin, you know. It's up to you to interpret that. So I'm about to do a little bit more, because I like to do kind of like a painter type of style. So I'm going through a cleanup phase right now. So I'm going to do is just go through and find all those little stray areas and just kind of clean it up a little bit. You see, I want to bring up a little bit more the edge of his hair. So I'm going to just kind of bring in a tiny little line back here, just to kind of pop the back of the head up a little. This is a mistake, so I'm just going to cover that. There was another one down here, so I'm just going to cover that. We'll give it time to dry too. This is where I get messy. Sometimes I'll do it with a brush, sometimes I'll do it with a pen. So with a pen, I can go around, and I'm like, I don't like how that ends, so I'm going to go through and just kind of clean that up a little. Just to kind of break that up a little. And this part. Add some